The Galactic Council had always studied many worlds and species, but Earth was one that caused both curiosity and worry. It was a small planet, blue and green, with people who had advanced quickly in only a short span of time. While most species took thousands of years to step into the stars, humans had done it in centuries. The Council warned the empires who showed interest in Earth, "Do not push them, do not attack them, for they will fight in ways you cannot imagine." But warnings were often ignored when power and pride were at stake. Captain Alara of the Korath Empire stood on the bridge of her warship, looking at the planet on the main display. She was confident. To her, humans were loud, disorganized, and reckless. They lacked the discipline of the Korath. Her fleet was large, her ships strong, her soldiers bred for war. She believed Earth would fall quickly, just like so many other planets. She did not believe the rumors that humans refused to surrender, that they would rather destroy themselves than bow to an enemy. She thought those stories were spread to scare others. For Alara, Earth was an opportunity to prove her power and win favor within her empire. On Earth, the news of the invasion spread faster than fire. Colonel Daniel Brooks of the United Earth Defense Command gathered his officers in a room deep under Washington. The screens showed alien ships moving into orbit. The people in the room were tense, some pale with fear, but Daniel's voice was steady. He told them they were not going to surrender. Humanity would fight, not just with weapons, but with cleverness, with unity, and with their will to survive. He reminded them that humans had endured countless wars, disasters, and struggles. Every time they rose again. Now, facing an enemy from the stars, they would rise once more. Among the officers was Emma Carter, a brilliant strategist who had studied every major war in human history. She believed that their greatest strength was unpredictability. No empire could understand the way humans fought because humans adapted quickly. They could turn defeat into lessons and lessons into victories. Next to her was Marcus Hill, an engineer who had once designed civilian satellites. Now he worked on turning those same machines into weapons, reprogramming them to strike the alien fleet. These three, Daniel, Emma, and Marcus, formed the heart of Earth's defense. The first demand for surrender came from Captain Alara. Her voice echoed across every broadcast. Translated into human languages, she demanded that Earth hand over its leaders and resources. She promised that those who surrendered would be spared, while those who resisted would be destroyed. Many listening across the planet felt fear, but when Colonel Daniel appeared on the broadcast after her, his words burned stronger than fear. He said humanity would not kneel, that Earth belonged to its people and that they would fight for every city, every home, and every life. He did not shout, but his steady tone carried more power than the alien threat. Families across the world began preparing. In New York, parents guided their children into underground shelters. In Texas, farmers dug trenches and prepared weapons from whatever they had. In Tokyo, students volunteered to work as coders, hacking into communication systems. In Africa, entire villages came together to share resources and build defenses. Humanity was not divided now. They were united against a common enemy. Marcus worked with his team in hidden facilities, turning old technology into new weapons. He remembered long nights where he and his engineers barely slept. They reprogrammed satellites, built makeshift railguns, and created traps to surprise the invaders. Every piece of junk was turned into something useful. Emma, on the other hand, planned their strategy. She set up decoys, ambushes, and misleading signals to confuse the Korath. She told Daniel that their lack of resources could be turned into an advantage if they made the enemy believe humans had more strength than they truly did. Meanwhile, the first alien ships entered Earth's skies. Over New York, massive shadows covered the buildings as people looked up in horror. The ships glowed with alien energy, and their weapons hummed with power. But when Alara broadcast her demand for surrender again, no answer came. Instead, she saw missiles streaking through the air from hidden launch sites. Some were destroyed mid-flight, but others struck her ships. The damage was not great, but it was unexpected. To Alara, this was not the behavior of a species ready to surrender. It was the first sign that the humans would be different. In Washington, Daniel stood before his soldiers. He reminded them that every second they held the line mattered. Every minute bought more time for Marcus to finish his weapons, for Emma to set more traps, and for families to reach safety. He told them that the aliens believed humans would bow, but they would prove them wrong. His words spread far beyond the base. Across the planet, soldiers and civilians alike repeated them. It became a promise. Humans would not surrender. The first clashes happened in the streets of Chicago. Alien troops, tall and armored, marched through the city expecting fear. Instead, they found resistance. Local fighters, armed with rifles and explosives, attacked from rooftops and alleys. Even when outnumbered, they kept fighting. The Korath soldiers sent messages back to their fleet. The humans were not behaving as predicted. They did not run. They did not beg. They fought. Emma directed operations from her command center. She saw the reports and adjusted quickly. If the aliens pushed harder in one city, she shifted resources and fighters to weaken their supply lines. She told her teams to never give the enemy rest. Every ambush, every strike, every moment of resistance mattered. Marcus tested his modified satellites. For the first time, a rod of metal fell from orbit, slamming into a Korath carrier above the Atlantic. The explosion lit up the night sky and cheers rose across the world. Alara was furious. She had believed this war would be swift. Yet within the first days, she saw her fleet take damage and her soldiers report failure after failure. She told herself it was only the beginning, that her empire was stronger, that humans could not resist forever. But deep in her mind, the warnings of the Galactic Council began to stir. She remembered their words. Never attack humans, for they will fight until the end. Colonel Daniel looked over the maps in his bunker. His eyes were tired, his body heavy with exhaustion, but he refused to show weakness. He thought of his family, safe in a shelter, and he thought of every other family counting on him. He promised himself that Earth would not fall. He believed in Emma's strategies and Marcus's inventions, but more than anything, he believed in the spirit of his people. Humans had always been underestimated. This time it would be no different. The first part of the war had begun. Ships burned in the skies, soldiers clashed in the streets, and humanity stood together against an empire that believed itself unstoppable. And though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear. The humans would never surrender. Not now, not ever. The invasion of Earth grew worse with each passing day. Alien ships circled the skies, their dark shadows stretching over cities and towns. Many people hid in underground shelters, but many others stayed above to fight. The streets of New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago became battle zones where humans and aliens clashed. The Korath Empire believed that the humans would break soon, but they were wrong. Every attack only made humans more determined. Colonel Daniel Brooks worked night and day in his command bunker. His uniform was worn and his eyes showed how little he slept, but his voice never shook. He spoke to his soldiers with calm strength, reminding them that they were not only fighting for themselves, but for all of humanity. He told them that every stand they made was a message to the invaders that Earth would not fall. His words kept many from losing hope. Emma Carter directed strategies from her operations center. She studied maps, radio reports, and video feeds from drones. She saw where the Korath troops were moving and sent human fighters to strike where they least expected it. She planned ambushes in ruined buildings, set up traps on highways, and ordered surprise attacks at night. She was always thinking 2 steps ahead, and her quick thinking saved thousands of lives. Many soldiers began calling her the mind of Earth's resistance. Marcus Hill worked with his engineers in secret facilities hidden under mountains and deep in forests. He barely slept, his hands covered in grease and burns from machinery. He turned scrap metal into weapons, built railguns on the backs of trucks, and reprogrammed satellites to strike from orbit. He believed that if humans could use their creativity and resourcefulness, they could fight even the strongest empire. His team admired his tireless energy, and many said Marcus never asked others to do something he was not willing to do himself. The Korath soldiers were tall, strong, and armed with advanced weapons. They marched into Earth cities with confidence, believing that humans would scatter like frightened animals. But what they found shocked them. In Chicago, small groups of fighters attacked from windows and sewers. In Los Angeles, citizens set up barricades and fought in the streets. In New York, even ordinary shopkeepers and students stood side by side, throwing Molotov cocktails at armored troops. The aliens had never seen such defiance. They were trained to fight armies, not entire populations who refused to bow. Reports reached Captain Alara aboard her flagship. Her soldiers complained that the humans were not fighting like normal enemies. They did not retreat in fear. Even when humans lost ground, they regrouped and attacked again. Her commanders told her that every street, every building, and every forest was turning into a battlefield. Alara grew angry. She believed the humans were simply being reckless, but in her heart, she felt a small fear begin to grow. She remembered the Council's warning. Humans will never surrender. The orbital strikes became harsher. Alien weapons destroyed parts of cities, leaving rubble and fire behind. Entire neighborhoods were leveled in minutes. But even in the ruins, humans fought. Children carried messages through tunnels. Old men repaired broken weapons, and women trained alongside soldiers. Everyone did something to help. Humanity had never been so united before. People from every nation, every background, and every belief stood together. For once, there were no divisions. There was only one side, humanity. Emma Carter used the destruction to her advantage. She ordered fighters to use the ruins as cover, striking at alien patrols when they passed through broken buildings. She set traps in collapsed tunnels and directed hit-and-run attacks that made the aliens feel unsafe, even in their strongest positions. Her goal was not to win every fight, but to make the invaders believe Earth was impossible to control. Marcus supported her by building new weapons from the wreckage. He created bombs from car engines, drones from spare parts, and railguns from train machinery. The aliens expected weakness, but they found endless creativity. Colonel Daniel became the symbol of human defiance. His speeches were broadcast across hidden networks. Even when people had no food or shelter, his words gave them strength. He told them that they were writing history, that every child and every future generation would remember their courage. He promised them that surrender was not an option, because to surrender would mean the end of humanity's freedom. People believed him, and his voice carried like fire through the darkness of war. In the forests of Virginia, alien soldiers searched for human camps. They walked carefully, scanning the trees with their advanced sensors. Suddenly, explosions erupted from hidden mines. Humans with camouflage attacked from the branches, firing old rifles and homemade weapons. The aliens tried to regroup, but the humans vanished into the forest, striking from every side. The Korath commander sent a desperate report to Ilara. The humans were like ghosts, always there, always striking, never surrendering. Marcus's satellites achieved their first great victory when they destroyed an alien carrier above the Pacific Ocean. The massive ship fell in flames, its wreckage scattering into the sea. Across Earth, people cheered. It was proof that the aliens could be hurt, that they were not untouchable. For the first time, the invaders realized this war would not be easy. Ilara ordered her fleets to focus on destroying the satellites, but Marcus always found a way to protect or rebuild them. Emma noticed something new. The more humans resisted, the more frightened the alien soldiers became. They were not used to enemies who did not beg for mercy. They were not used to facing civilians who fought as fiercely as soldiers. Some alien soldiers even began to hesitate in battle, unsure if they could truly defeat such an enemy. Emma sent this information to Daniel, and he used it in his speeches, telling his people that they were breaking the spirit of the invaders. In Washington, Daniel gathered his closest team. He told Emma and Marcus that the war was only beginning, but they had already shown the enemy what humans were made of. He reminded them that they were not just fighting for survival, but for dignity, for the right to decide their own future. Emma nodded, her eyes full of determination. Marcus grinned despite his exhaustion, promising that he had more ideas for weapons that would shock the enemy even further. Captain Ilara, sitting in her command chair, listened to the constant reports of resistance. She refused to admit it aloud, but she was troubled. Every time she thought the humans would break, they struck harder. Every time she believed they had been defeated, they rose again. She began to understand the words of the Council, though she did not want to believe them. She told herself that with enough force, Earth would finally fall. But in the depths of her heart, she wondered if her empire had made a terrible mistake. The battle for Earth was no longer a simple conquest. It had become something greater. The humans were fighting with a spirit the galaxy had never seen before. Their weapons were weak compared to the Korath, but their hearts were stronger than steel. They had turned their fear into fire, their pain into power, and their unity into a weapon no empire could easily crush. The war was only in its early months, but already the message was clear to both sides. The Korath fought with strength and discipline, but the humans fought with something the aliens could not understand. They fought for their homes, their families, their planet, and their freedom. And though many cities burned and many lives were lost, humanity stood unbroken. The Council had been right. The humans would never surrender, no matter the cost. The war dragged on longer than anyone expected. What the Korath Empire thought would take weeks had stretched into long months. The skies above Earth were filled with burning wrecks of ships, both human and alien. Cities were scarred, forests burned, and oceans shook from the crashes of war machines. Yet humanity still stood. They refused to give in, even as the cost grew higher every day. Colonel Daniel Brooks walked through the underground base in Washington. He moved slowly, not from weakness, but from exhaustion. He carried the weight of thousands of lives on his shoulders. Soldiers saluted as he passed, their faces worn but full of trust. Daniel's presence gave them hope. They knew he would never give the order to surrender. His steady voice on the radio was enough to make people keep fighting, even when they were tired and hungry. Emma Carter sat in the strategy room, surrounded by maps and glowing screens. Her sharp eyes studied every movement of the enemy. She saw the patterns in how the Korath fleets attacked. She noticed where they were strong and where they were stretched too thin. She sent orders to strike where the aliens least expected it. Her traps turned ruined buildings into death zones for invaders, and her decoys pulled enemy ships into ambushes. She understood that this was not a war of numbers, but of minds. If humans could outthink the Korath, they could survive. Marcus Hill worked with his team in hidden workshops. His clothes were stained with oil, and his hands were full of scars, but his eyes burned with determination. He built weapons from scraps, railguns from train parts, and drones from broken machines. He reprogrammed satellites again and again, making them fall like spears of fire from the sky. Every time a human weapon destroyed a Korath ship, cheers spread across the world. Marcus reminded everyone that human creativity was as deadly as any alien technology. The Korath Empire began to feel the strain. Their soldiers grew weary of endless ambushes. They had expected a quick victory, but the humans kept fighting in every ruined street and broken field. Reports reached Captain Alara that even captured humans refused to bow. They spat in the faces of their captors and shouted their defiance until their last breath. It unsettled her troops, who were used to seeing enemies beg for mercy. In Chicago, human resistance turned the city into a fortress of rubble. Fighters hid in sewers and collapsed buildings, striking when aliens marched by. Children acted as messengers, slipping through tunnels with coded notes. In Los Angeles, people fought block by block, turning highways into traps filled with mines and explosives. In the forests of South America, whole villages struck from the trees, vanishing before the aliens could respond. The Korath soldiers called the humans shadows because they seemed to be everywhere, always striking, never surrendering. Emma's strategies became bolder. She intercepted alien transmissions and used the information to predict their movements. She tricked them into wasting energy and resources by chasing false targets. She sent small human groups to harass supply lines, cutting the invaders off from their food and fuel. The aliens were powerful, but they began to starve in both body and spirit. Emma told Daniel that the war was turning. The Korath were learning fear. Marcus created a new weapon using railguns mounted on trains. These massive guns rolled across the countryside, hidden until the moment they fired. They struck with such force that alien carriers were torn apart in the skies. The sight of burning wrecks falling to Earth filled humans with pride and filled the aliens with dread. Marcus told his team that as long as humans had imagination, they would never run out of ways to fight. Colonel Daniel visited wounded soldiers in underground hospitals. Many had lost limbs, others their families, but none spoke of surrender. They told Daniel they would return to the fight as soon as they healed. Some even begged to be sent back to the battlefield despite their injuries. Daniel held their hands and promised them their sacrifices would not be forgotten. Their courage gave him strength to continue. Captain Alara sat in her command chair, staring at reports from across Earth. She was proud and disciplined, but even she could not deny what she saw. Her empire's fleets were suffering heavy losses. Her soldiers wrote desperate messages, speaking of humans who fought like demons. She remembered the Galactic Council's warning. She had dismissed it before, but now she could no longer ignore it. The humans were not like other species. They would not break. As the months passed, the Korath Empire grew desperate. They increased their attacks, sending more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. But the harder they pushed, the harder humanity resisted. Farmers turned fields into battlegrounds filled with traps. Students broke alien codes and sent false signals. Engineers built bombs from everyday machines. Humanity was turning every corner of the planet into a weapon. Emma told Daniel that the humans were not just fighting. They were adapting. Every failure taught them a lesson, and every lesson made them stronger. Marcus agreed. He said that the Korath had advanced technology, but humans had something better: the will to never stop learning, never stop fighting. Daniel listened to them both and told them that Earth's greatest strength was not its weapons, but its people. In Europe, entire towns rose up against the invaders, armed with whatever they could find. In Asia, families built underground tunnels that stretched for miles, allowing fighters to move unseen. In Africa, warriors on the plains struck fast and vanished before the aliens could react. In the Middle East, desert fighters used the shifting sands to trap heavy alien vehicles. Every continent became a battlefield, and every human became a soldier in their own way. The Korath soldiers began to whisper among themselves. They wondered if the humans were truly mortal or if they were something else entirely. Their commanders tried to silence these fears, but the doubts spread. Alien morale began to fall. For the first time, the mighty empire questioned its own strength. Captain Ilara stood at the window of her flagship, looking down at Earth. She thought of the countless soldiers she had lost, the endless battles, the unbroken resistance. She knew her empire would not forgive her for failing, yet she also knew that victory over humans might be impossible. She clenched her fists and told herself that she would not retreat. She would fight to prove the empire's power, even if it destroyed her. Colonel Daniel prepared his forces for the next stage of the war. He told Emma and Marcus that they had to keep pushing. The aliens were weakening, but they would not give up easily. He said the war would decide the future of humanity, not only for their generation, but for all time. His words spread through the resistance like fire, filling every fighter with new determination. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were not weak. They were clever, they were united, and they were unbreakable. Every strike they made, every trap they set, and every battle they fought proved the Council's warning was true. The humans would never surrender. They would fight until nothing remained but victory or ashes, and as the war entered its darkest stage, the spirit of Earth burned brighter than ever before. The long war reached a stage where both humans and aliens were pushed to their limits. The world had changed. Cities were broken, skies filled with smoke, and oceans full of wreckage. But even in all this destruction, humanity still fought. They were tired, hungry, and scarred, yet their spirit did not break. The Korath Empire, with all its power, began to understand that the battle for Earth was unlike any war they had ever fought. Colonel Daniel Brooks stood in a command room deep underground. The air smelled of sweat and metal, and the room buzzed with radio chatter. Daniel looked at the maps filled with red and blue marks, showing battles across the planet. His voice was calm when he spoke to his officers. He told them that the enemy was growing weaker, that their supplies were running thin, and that now was the time to strike harder. His soldiers trusted him, for they knew he spoke not with empty hope but with unshakable belief. Emma Carter spent hours with her team, watching every alien move. She intercepted their signals, studied their supply lines, and marked their weak points. She had learned that the Korath were disciplined but not flexible. They followed orders too strictly, and she used this against them. She designed a plan to lure them into traps by making them believe humans were retreating. She created patterns of fake surrender only to strike harder when the aliens moved forward. Every time the aliens thought they were winning, Emma turned their victory into defeat. Marcus Hill worked without rest in hidden workshops. His engineers followed him with loyalty, even when exhaustion weighed on them. He built new versions of his satellite weapons, faster and stronger than before. He mounted railguns on ships, trains, and even trucks. He taught farmers to build explosives from simple tools, turning fields into deadly traps. Marcus told his team that human creativity was their strongest weapon, and the galaxy would learn that Earth could turn anything into a blade. The alien soldiers grew restless. They were not used to such resistance. Many of them had started to believe the humans were endless in number. They spoke in whispers about how every street corner hid fighters, how every building could be a trap. Their morale crumbled with each failed attempt to hold cities. Some even refused to follow orders, fearing the unseen attacks waiting for them. Mutiny began to spread among the lower ranks, something the Korath Empire had never experienced before. In the forests of Europe, humans lured alien convoys into narrow paths and destroyed them with ambushes. In the deserts of the Middle East, fighters hid in caves and struck with sudden fury before vanishing. In Asia, entire villages worked together to cut alien supply routes, leaving soldiers hungry and weak. Across Africa, Warriors struck fast and disappeared into the plains. Everywhere the aliens turned, humans were waiting. The Korath Empire thought they had come to conquer a planet, but they had stepped into a world of resistance that never ended. Emma's greatest plan was set in motion. She discovered that the aliens had established a major command center in Earth's upper atmosphere, orbiting the planet. She designed a trap that would pull their fleet into a vulnerable position. Marcus worked beside her, preparing satellites with massive payloads. Daniel gathered his best soldiers, ready to launch a coordinated counterattack. The humans knew the risk was great, but they also knew this was their chance to cripple the enemy. The plan began with false transmissions. Emma tricked the aliens into believing a large human base had been discovered. The Korath fleet moved to attack, unaware that they were flying into a trap. Marcus activated his satellites, dropping rods of metal from orbit. The sky lit with fire as alien ships exploded. Human fighters on the ground launched everything they had: missiles, railguns, and drones striking at the confused enemy. Daniel's forces attacked from every side, pressing the aliens into chaos. Captain Alara sat in her command chair, watching her fleet fall apart. She had believed her empire's power was unmatched, yet now she saw her ships burning one by one. Reports came of soldiers surrendering or refusing to fight. She clenched her fists, refusing to believe this was happening. She told herself that the humans were reckless, that their luck would end. But deep inside, she knew this was not luck. It was something else. It was the spirit of a people who would rather die than surrender. On the ground, Daniel led his soldiers through the ruins of Washington. Alien command posts had been set up in the city, guarded by heavy troops. Daniel's men fought block by block, their rifles cracking through the smoke. Civilians joined in, throwing explosives from rooftops. Every alley became a battlefield. Emma directed reinforcements, making sure no unit was left alone. Marcus's weapons struck from hidden positions, collapsing alien fortifications. Slowly, the humans pushed forward. The battle was fierce, but humanity refused to stop. When soldiers fell, others took their place. When weapons broke, Marcus made new ones from wreckage. When the aliens pushed harder, Emma shifted her plans to strike where they least expected it. Daniel never stopped moving, never stopped speaking to his people. He shouted that this was their world, that no invader would take it from them. His words spread like fire among his soldiers. They fought with renewed strength. The aliens realized they could not win. Their fleet was broken, their soldiers losing faith, their supplies running low. For the first time in their history, the Korath Empire faced defeat at the hands of a species they had thought weak. Captain Alara felt shame and rage. She thought of her empire and what would happen if she returned in failure. But she also thought of the humans, of their endless defiance. She knew the truth now. The council had been right. Humans would never surrender. Not to her, not to anyone. As the final strikes fell on the alien command posts, the humans celebrated. They had not won the war yet, but they had won the greatest battle of it. Across the planet, cheers rose from bunkers, villages, and ruins. For the first time, people felt hope that victory was possible. Emma smiled for the first time in weeks, her tired eyes shining. Marcus laughed with his engineers, proud of what they had built. Daniel looked at his soldiers and civilians, his chest heavy with pride. He told them the fight was not over, but they had shown the world and the galaxy that humanity could not be broken. The war would continue, but the balance had shifted. The Korath Empire was no longer a predator, but prey caught in a storm it could not escape. Humanity, scarred and battered, stood unbroken. The legend was growing beyond Earth. Other species in the galaxy began to whisper of the humans who fought until the end, who turned ruins into weapons, who made every life a shield for freedom. And as Captain Alara's fleet limped away from the battlefield, she sent one last message to her empire. They had underestimated Earth, and they would pay the price for it. The final stage of the war had come. Both humans and aliens knew that the next battles would decide everything. Earth was scarred from fire and ruin, yet its people still stood. The Korath Empire had lost much of its strength, but their leader, Captain Alara, refused to accept defeat. She gathered the remaining ships of her fleet and prepared for one last attempt to crush humanity. Across the world, humans also prepared, knowing that this could be their last chance to secure freedom. Colonel Daniel Brooks walked through the command bunker, speaking to every soldier he passed. He told them that they were not only fighting for themselves but for the children who would come after them. He reminded them of the months they had already survived, of the battles they had won, of the sacrifices that had carried them this far. His voice filled them with courage. To them, he was not only a leader but a symbol of their strength. Emma Carter studied the movements of the alien fleet. Her sharp mind noticed their weaknesses, the gaps in their formation, the hesitation in their strikes. She told Daniel that the aliens were tired, that their spirit was broken, and that this was the moment to press harder than ever. She began to plan a massive counterstrike, a move that would require every part of humanity to work together. If it succeeded, the aliens would be forced to retreat. If it failed, Earth would fall. Marcus Hill pushed his engineers to finish their final weapons. They worked in silence, their hands burned and cut, but their eyes full of determination. Marcus built a network of orbital weapons using the last satellites still in human control. He created hidden railguns deep in the mountains, their barrels pointed toward the skies. He even turned cargo planes into flying bombers ready to crash into alien ships if needed. He told his team that no invention was too small, no sacrifice too great, because everything was needed for humanity to survive. When the alien fleet appeared above Earth once more, people everywhere looked to the skies. The dark shapes of their ships spread across the horizon, blotting out the sun. Fear filled the air, but alongside fear came resolve. Families in shelters prayed. Soldiers checked their rifles. Children carried supplies to fighters. Humanity was ready. The battle began with fire raining from the sky. Alien weapons tore through the atmosphere, striking cities and bases. But this time, humans did not scatter. They struck back at once. Railguns hidden in mountains fired into the sky. Missiles from the ground hit alien ships. Marcus's satellites dropped rods of metal, piercing through carriers and destroyers. Explosions lit the heavens as alien ships fell burning to the earth. Colonel Daniel led his forces through Washington once more. The city was almost unrecognizable, a landscape of rubble and smoke. Yet humans filled the streets armed with everything they could carry. Civilians stood beside soldiers, refusing to leave. Daniel shouted that this was their land, their home, and that no invader would ever take it. His words carried through radios, reaching fighters across the planet. Emma directed the global counterstrike. She ordered fighters in Europe to target alien supply lines. She guided resistance forces in Asia to cut communications. She told soldiers in Africa to strike from the plains, moving too fast for the aliens to catch. Every region of Earth rose together in one coordinated attack. The Korath Empire faced not just soldiers but an entire planet that fought as one. The aliens tried to respond with power, but they were too slow. Their fleets broke formation under the constant strikes. Their soldiers, already tired and afraid, lost their discipline. Some units refused to fight. Others surrendered. For the first time, the empire that had crushed so many worlds now faced defeat. Captain Ilara watched from her flagship, her pride turning to despair. She had believed her people were unstoppable, but now she saw the truth. The humans had something her empire could not understand, a will that refused to break. Even as she ordered her ships to fight, she knew it was too late. Her commanders reported heavy losses. Her soldiers spoke of humans who fought until their last breath. She thought of the Council's warning, of the words she had ignored. Now she understood. The humans would never surrender. On the ground, Daniel led the final charge into the alien command post in Washington. His soldiers stormed through smoke and fire, striking the last of the enemy. Civilians joined them, throwing stones, explosives, and anything they could carry. Marcus's weapons destroyed the alien strongholds one by one. Emma guided the final moves, making sure no escape was possible. Slowly, the command post fell, and with it the last hold of the invaders. The Korath flagship took heavy damage from Marcus's orbital weapons. Fires spread across its surface and alarms rang through its halls. Captain Ilara stood tall, refusing to abandon her post. But when she saw her fleet retreating, when she heard her soldiers begging for mercy, she finally gave the order to withdraw. Her voice was cold when she sent her last message to the Galactic Council. She told them, "The humans cannot be broken. They will never surrender, not to us, not to anyone." As the alien fleet retreated into the stars, Earth roared with victory. People poured from shelters and ruins, cheering and crying. Soldiers embraced civilians. Families held one another. For the first time in months, hope filled the air. The war had cost them much, but humanity had survived. They had done more than survive. They had defeated an empire. Emma sat in her command center, her eyes wet with tears she did not try to hide. Marcus laughed with his engineers, though his voice shook with exhaustion. Daniel stood before his people, his face proud and strong. He told them that they had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. They had proved that no empire, no matter how powerful, could take their freedom. The story of Earth's victory spread beyond the planet. Across the galaxy, oppressed species heard of humans who fought against impossible odds. They whispered of the people who turned rubble into weapons, who turned despair into fire, who never surrendered. The legend of humanity grew, and with it the fear of every empire that might one day face them. Earth was broken, but it was free. Its people were scarred, but they were unbroken. The war had ended, but the memory of it would last forever. The Council's warning had become truth written in fire and blood. Never attack humans, for they will fight until nothing remains but victory. And so, under the smoke-filled skies of their battered world, humanity stood together, ready to rebuild, ready to rise again, and ready to face whatever came next.